Muhammad Firdaus Muhammad Law from University Kebangsaan Malaysia. Dipersilakan.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone. Thank you to Dr. Zali, our moderator for today's this morning session. So my name is Muhammad Firdaus bin Muhammad Noor, and I'm from the National Institute of Malaysia, UKM. I am honored to be given this opportunity to receive this scholarship in this year's programs. Okay, so first of all, I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to three parties in this research. The first one is to From itself for recognizing my work. And then secondly, I would like to extend my gratitude to my supervisors in UKM, Dr. Muhammad Effendi Iwan Muhammad Tori and Dr. Nur Ain Sulaiman, and also my scholarship provider, Ministry of Education Malaysia. Alright, so this is a little bit about me. I'm an English teacher, serving since 2013. Currently doing my PhD in UKM. Before this, I did master in UKM as well in measurement evaluation. And in fact, this study that I'm going to present today was my master research. Some achievement of myself. Alright. So, as an introduction, when I was preparing this slide, I was thinking of any moment in my life that can capture the real situation of subjective assessment. So, I remember a few years ago, I was coaching my school scholar speaking team. You know scholar speaking, right? So, at the district final level. So, lots of hard work, weeks of drill, so we performed very well. And then we were performed the first, and we were greeted with a big round of applause. And then came all the other school, the rival school and all. And then when the result was announced, we were shocked because we did our best, but we didn't win any place in the competition. So that moment stayed in me for quite some time, and it reflects how subjective assessment can be very, very subjective. It's not saying that the judges was being biased, but to be rational, in fact, bias is unavoidable, inevitable. So this moment, it does not motivate the study, but it really somehow, right? So rating in language assessment, what makes it uniquely challenging and different? Because to begin with, we begin with two scoring rules. On one side, we have objective items, for example, multiple choice questions, normally used in reading and listening for English testing. And then also we have subjective tasks, guided by human judgment, commonly used in writing and speaking assessment. This brings us to rater, the involvement of raters as the human variable, where they are responsible to interpret and apply rubrics using their judgment, which add unavoidable subjectivity. And this, their rating reliability hinges on systematic training, calibration, and also psychometric monitoring. And then, when they are rating, they use rubric as the blueprint of the scoring. With rubric, we have holistic rubric, single band, or analytical rubric, multi-trait scales. And it is important for the rubric to be explicit, include explicit descriptors for all the sub-skills that we want to assess in language proficiency to ensure that the construct is fully covered. But with language assessment, it's very complex, multi-dimensional construct, not as other trait. So language ability, because language ability is not a single trait, it blends an array of sub-skills. For example, in speaking, we have vocabulary, syntax, discourse, pragmatics, interactional competence. So it is very important for iterators disentangle these overlapping sub-skills in real time, making language task assessment more intricate than any other subject. So the bias is the hidden fault lines in rating. What is bias really? Bias is a systematic score deviation not attributable to the students through performance. Because when raters are rating the students' answers, they are not only using the rubrics but also anything else that are not attributable to student score. Where does it snake in? It can snake in through rater tendencies, student characteristics, item design, poly item design, domain demands, assessment settings. Yeah. And then why does it hurt? Because it leads to inaccurate scores. Leniency and severity will mask students' real ability, and also it leads to unfair outcomes, which inconsistent treatment will disadvantage certain groups or groups. And how do we model this bias? Obviously using Lens model and also MFRM. Okay, and so what? When we use bias, we can detect and taming bias, safeguard reliability, validity, and ability in language assessment. So why does teacher bias matter? I give you 4 points today. It threatens assessment fairness, because when bias happens, it skews student score and no longer reflect a student's true ability. All right. And then also it erodes reliability and validity, because when bias happens, the inter-rater reliability will fall down, and also introduces unwanted variance into scores. The variance that comes from rater, not from students themselves. And it will undermine the validity argument built on consistent measurement of the unintended intent construct. On top of that, bias will amplify inequalities. Certain group of students may receive inflated or deflated scores. This will widen achievement gaps between student groups, and this will contravene the fairness standard that we uphold in the assessment standard, and also the SDG for commitment to equitable education. And last but not least, bias will reduce instructional usefulness, whether to students or teachers. For students, they will get wrong message of their strengths and weaknesses, and for teachers, they will get the teachers will misjudge the efficacy of their pedagogy. And why is speaking so prone to bias? Because subjective performance judgment in speaking assessment, raters often rely on holistic impression, which creates more room for personal interpretation apart from the construct or the traits outlined in the rubrics. Okay, and then with speaking assessment, just like what I mentioned just now, it involves multiple constructs, and it is hard for teachers to disentangle one domain from another, and we want to avoid halo effect. Halo effect is when teacher rating in one domain or one trait is influenced by another domain. Okay, and then this also comes into the picture, the influence of non-linguistic clues. For example, accent familiarity, like when you are assessing speaking, right? You are not assessing the accent, but the content, the competence, right? Sometimes this accent will affect teacher's judgment. Body language, perceived confidence, and even likability can unconsciously sway judgment, especially when assessment criteria are vaguely defined. So apart from that, teachers' own background in teaching, their experience in training, assessment can further shape how they interpret student performance. So, the present study, the objective is to determine bias interaction between the teachers and the students during the marking of an English language speaking assessment. And based on that, the research question is, to what extent do teacher-student interactions influence bias in marking of an English language speaking assessment, with one hypothesis that there is no statistically significant bias interaction between teachers and students. So this is the conceptual framework adapted from the Lens model and also ANGLEHUB 2013. The target of the assessment is speaking ability, speaking skill, and the final one is student scores. But student scores are not shaped only by students' ability in speaking. They are filtered through a number of cues, and in the study identified as many facets, which are 4 facets. The first one is teachers, looking into their experiences in terms of teaching, rating, and also training. Students themselves, and the third facet is assessment items and also rating domains. So eventually, this framework will lead to answering 2 types of outcomes, which are teachers' rating quality in terms of severity, fairness, and also fit, and also bias interaction between the facets. For my research, this master research, I look into all interaction with all the facets. But for the purpose of this study, I'm looking into teachers and students only. All right. Okay. So the methodology. The study involved 164 English teachers, language teachers in Malaysia, Selangor, Malaysia. They were selected through multi-stage cluster sampling, taking into consideration their experience in teaching, rating, and also training. And then the instruments used are recorded responses of 30 students from an English language speaking test. These students are coming from different background and also different level of proficiency. And then we use analytical scoring rubric with the 3 domains just now mentioned, and then scoring sheet, also detailed scoring guidelines. And also the training was given prior to the scoring, the data collection. Okay, so the data collection followed a linked rating design where I link the facets using the same items and domains. And data analysis using MFRM facet 3.87. This was back in 2020, so 5 years ago, involving 4 facets: students, teachers, items, domains, and using 2 kinds of analysis: main effect analysis and also bias interaction analysis. So this is looking into data analysis in detail, model use, MFRM, using 2 kinds of analysis. These are the facets involved. The aims are to first check whether each teacher's severity is consistent across all students, and 2 is to flag cases of leniency or severity beyond model expectation. So when interpreting the bias measure, I use this guideline. Bias measure more than 0 is considered as linear, meaning teachers score higher than model projection. And when bias less than 0, it means teachers are severe, teachers score lower than what model has projected. And in terms of statistical significance, the t-value, negative, positive 2, with p-value 0.5. Okay, so the unit of analysis, 164 teachers, 3 items, 30 students, and 3 domains. So these are all the unit for each facet. So from this, each students were rated by 6 teachers, meaning not all students were rated by all teachers. And each teacher rated 10 students, but they are linked by items and the same domains. So in the end, we were able to generate 6,886 score units and 782 teacher-student interactions. So this is the finding of the main effect, the right map. You can see here we have a teacher, candidates, item, and domains. In terms of the minimum logic for each facets are displayed. In terms of teacher, they range between negative 2.8 here, 2.81 to 2.59. And then for students, they range between negative 2.12 to 2.82. And then items, negative 0.2 to 0.33. And for domains, the 3 domains somehow they are brought together, negative 0.109 to 0.112. So this is the findings of the bias interaction between teachers and students. You can see the bias control plot of teachers versus students p-value. This is following what occurs 2015 by my time. He has a recent book, 2023, if I'm not mistaken. So the red line is the threshold of the interaction, meaning this interaction are not significantly biased, but what comes after that red line are significantly biased. So below is leniency bias, and the upper one is severity bias. So based on that, 25.8% of all the interaction between teachers and students are considered as significant bias, and of all among 253, 53.2 are considered as severity bias, and 46.8 are considered as leniency bias. The maximum bias measure is 4.1, and minimum bias measure is negative 4.84. So based on these findings, we can say that 1 in 4 students receive bias rating from the teachers, which is worrying. So if you have four students, 1 is biased. 4 students, right? Okay. So this is in detail. I looked into further details by grouping the students into their ability level based on logics. So based on the 30 students, 8 are high ability, 16 are mid-range ability, and 6 six students are low ability. So we just focus on here. Of all these three, the most group that receive bias are those students in the mid-range ability. Alright, so who gets the bias? High ability students only 29.8, low ability students 24.6, and the most one is 45.6%. Okay, some discussion about the findings. Number one, what I discussed or I discovered is bias isn't correct. It's right. A significant proportion, thank you, of teacher-student interaction showed statistically significant bias. This clearly confirms that subjectivity is persistent risk in speaking assessment, where teachers must evaluate not just content but also other domains, including grammar and cognitive competence. Because in my context, the students are junior high school, so it does not involve many domains. But in real setting, maybe in higher education, it involves many traits, so it will be prone to bias. Okay, and then number two, severity trumps leniency. Harsher scores outnumber lenient ones. This pattern may stem from teachers' high expectation, a desire to maintain academic rigor, or even a belief in tough love as a tool for motivating students. They don't want to demotivate the students, so they're being Alright, and then third one, middle ability, that is the bias hot zone. The highest bias occurs in the middle band. High ability group shows more bias than low ability group. Mid-range performance are fuzzier because for the teachers it is hard. It's harder to classify the mediocre students, and raters lean on subjective cues. So this confirms ambiguity and amplifies variability. And last but not least, what follows the start of form? Lens model offers an explanation. Later judgments are shaped by multiple interacting cues, just like in a study. Students like first impression, perceived efforts, and past performance. So these cues aren't always aligned, but when they conflict, subjectivity creeps in. So some implication. Rating is not isolated, it's contextual. So empirical support for lens model, teacher, student, item, and domain interaction jointly shape scores. And then implication for theory. So we have to tighten the rubric development, clear granular criteria, curb ambiguity, so less bias. So, and also we have to incorporate task difficulty data when designing prompts and skills, and continuous rater calibration using video and feedback loops. So when designing rater training, it's very important for the teachers, to really understand how the rubrics work, maybe using sample videos to rate. And then targeted professional development, busting unconscious bias. Professional development must surface and neutralize expectancy and severity bias. Focus on subjective skills, for example, interactional competence, discourse management. And then lastly, within Malaysia's context, multilingual reality check. Diverse accents and cultural styles intensify bias risk. You know, like in Malaysia, we have Malay, Chinese, Indian, right? So we have to take into consideration maybe some students are not, obviously it's not their first language, right? So so they have to disregard this accent, this you know. And then findings guide more objective evaluation practice in national English programs, and we have to align teacher training and curriculum with fairness goals in a multicultural classroom framework. And finally, some limitation of the study. This study was in a local sandbox within Malaysia context, and also minor scope gaps. Other romance skills subjects were not tested. Primary, tertiary level absent, just focus on junior high school, and cross-cultural dynamics not examined. Some recommendations, maybe in the future we can broaden the lens by including multi-subject application, maybe using art, STEM, and other subjects. And also vertical study across primary, higher education to track bias evolution with task complexity. And also in terms of longitudinal and cultural frontiers studies, long-term tracking, how does bias change after judgment, professional development, and also probe linguistic and cultural diversity effect in multilingual classroom. and also maybe some intervention that we can do to calibrate and analytically reduce bias sustainably. So these are references. Final of thanks. So that's all for me.
Thank you. So we open the question from the floor. I think this is the only study that I have seen that there's more teacher than students.
Well, actually, I have to thank Dr. Bambang. When I did this study, I interacted with him through Facebook. He entertained all my silly questions, especially in terms of sample size. Initially, I just wanted to have 30 teachers because by using 30 teachers, I can still generate many scores. But he confirmed with me, I still have to follow the yellow table sample size. So that's why the sample is 164. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Bambang.
Yeah, any question? Yes, please.
Thanks very much. That was very interesting presentation. I've just got two recommendations. The first one is, you said that there were 3 questions in your study.
Yeah.
I think it's good to look to see if there are variation in any of those questions as well. For example, if there are more markers or rating variation in one question, so that means that your rubric may not be quite clear. So that one is one. And second one is, if you can give meaning to that bias, it's very important. Because, for example, you can compare students against a fail or pass benchmark to see what happens, what is the implication of bias for this student. For example, you can say, because of bias, this student actually failed, but in real, if there was no bias, those students actually wouldn't fail. Do you know what I mean? I think those two would add lots of value to what you've done, and you've done a great job. Thanks.
So with the second one, Doctor, do I have to compare their performance before and after the rating?
Yeah. Okay, so you have pre-test and kind of post-test. That was very interesting. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I wanted to comment the same, like Professor. Basically, maybe you can also take a look at the distractor for each item. So that will tell you more about the issues with the items. Who answered this? Who answered that? Any more question? We still have time. Or you can also ask the previous presenter.
Yeah, we are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, that's why both of them won the award. Very good project and also very good presentation. So to give the certificate.